The station called Nexus 7 floated in the dark space between empires, where no laws reached and no questions were asked. It was a place of shadows and secrets, where the galaxy's most dangerous beings came to do business that could never be done in the light. Here, assassins walked freely. Here, death was just another service for sale. Counselor Drath Yennik walked through the lower corridors with 2 armed guards at his sides. His scales were a deep purple, marking him as highborn among the hegemony elite. But his presence here, in this den of killers, showed how far he had fallen from respectable politics. He was desperate, and desperate men did desperate things. He had come to find Zeth Varric. The name alone made most beings nervous. Zeth was a Korthan, a species known for their 4 arms and their complete lack of mercy. He had killed more targets than anyone could count. Governments had fallen because of his work. Fortunes had changed hands. And through it all, Zeth had never failed. Not once. Drath found him in a private room at the back of a drinking establishment that had no name. Zeth sat alone at a table, his 4 hands wrapped around a single glass. His eyes, black as the void between stars, watched Drath approach without expression. "Counselor," Zeth said. His voice was soft, almost gentle. That was what made him so frightening. "You are far from home. I have a contract for you." Drath sat down across from him and placed a data chip on the table. "The payment is significant. Enough to buy a small moon, if you wanted one." Zeth did not touch the chip. "Tell me about the target." "A diplomat. A female named Kira Lawson. She works on the frontier world of Talith 4, building alliances with local species." Drath's voice grew bitter. "She has been disrupting my operations there. Smuggling routes that took decades to establish. Trade agreements that benefited my family for generations. All of it destroyed because this one woman decided to play hero. And you want her removed. Permanently." Zeth was quiet for a long moment. His black eyes studied Drath's face, reading something there that the counselor could not hide. Then, slowly, Zeth pushed the data chip back across the table. "No." Drath blinked. "I'm sorry? I will not accept this contract. You haven't even looked at the payment. I told you. It's enough to. I heard you." Zeth's voice remained calm. "The answer is still no." Drath leaned forward, confusion and anger mixing on his face. "You are Zeth Varric. You have killed princes and generals. You once eliminated an entire council of elders in a single night. Why would you refuse a simple diplomat?" "Because she is human." The word hung in the air between them. Drath waited for more explanation, but Zeth simply sat there, watching him with those empty black eyes. "I don't understand," Drath finally said. "Humans are soft. They have no claws, no natural weapons. Their skin tears easily. They live short lives on a single planet at the edge of explored space. What is there to fear?" Zeth's 4 hands came together on the table, fingers interlocking. When he spoke again, his voice was even softer than before. "Counselor, I have been killing for 200 years. In that time, I have learned many things about many species. I know which ones fight back and which ones run. I know which ones die quickly and which ones take time. I know the strong and the weak, the dangerous and the harmless." He paused. "And I know that there are some targets that no amount of money is worth. This is ridiculous. She is one woman. She is one human. That is the problem." Zeth stood up from the table. "Go find someone else, Counselor. There are many assassins on this station. Perhaps one of them is foolish enough to take your contract. But I promise you this, whoever accepts it will regret that choice. If they are lucky, they will only lose their life. If they are unlucky—" He shook his head slowly. "I have seen what happens when humans are given a reason to hunt. It is not something I wish to experience personally. He walked away without another word, leaving Drath alone with his data chip and his confusion. Over the next several hours, Drath approached every assassin guild on the station. He visited the Silent Blade, the Hollow Eye, the Children of the Empty Sun. He spoke to killers from a dozen different species, each one more deadly than the last. And every single one of them gave him the same answer. No. Some of them laughed at him. Some of them looked at him with something like pity. A few simply walked away the moment they heard the word human. But none of them would take the contract. It was old Ganeth, a retired assassin who now sold information, who finally took time to explain. You don't understand humans, do you? Ganeth was ancient, his shell cracked and faded with age. He ran an information brokerage in the station's lower levels, and he had seen more death than most beings could imagine. None of you soft-world species do. You look at them and you see weakness. No armor, no venom, no natural defenses. You think they survive on their planet by being gentle. Then educate me, Drath said through clenched teeth. Earth is what we call a death world. Class 12, if the old ratings mean anything to you. Everything that is trying to kill everything else, all the time. The gravity is brutal. The weather is insane. The diseases alone would wipe out most species in a generation. Ganeth leaned closer. And humans? They didn't just survive there. They conquered it. They spread across that whole terrible planet and made it theirs. Not because they were the strongest or the fastest, but because they absolutely refused to stop. One woman cannot be that dangerous. One human is never just one human. They bond, counselor. They form packs. Hurt one of them, and every human who knows them becomes your enemy. Not for money or politics, but because that's simply what they are. They will chase you across the galaxy. They will spend years hunting you down. They will sacrifice everything, their wealth, their safety, their own lives, just to make you pay for what you did. Ganeth sat back in his chair. The assassins know this. That's why they won't touch your contract. It's not about the killing. It's about what comes after. Drath left the station that night without finding anyone willing to help him. But as he traveled back towards civilized space, his anger only grew. He would find someone. He would make this human diplomat pay for ruining his operations. He did not know that word was already spreading through the darker corners of the galaxy. Whispers passed from ship to ship, station to station. Someone was trying to put a contract on a human. Someone was foolish enough to wake a sleeping predator. And somewhere on Talos 4, Kira Lawson continued her work, unaware of the storm gathering around her. But she was human, one of Earth, shaped by millions of years of survival against impossible odds. Whatever came for her would learn the truth that every assassin already knew. Targeting a human was not a contract. It was a death sentence. Ven Sithis was young, hungry, and convinced that he was the best assassin of his generation. He had earned his reputation quickly, completing contracts that others thought impossible. His species, the Drellians, were built for stealth. Their skin could shift colors to match any background, and their bones were flexible enough to fit through spaces that should have been too small. Ven had used these gifts well, and at only 40 years old. He was already famous in the underworld. When he heard about the massive bounty on a human diplomat, he saw opportunity. He found Counselor Drath through back channels, and accepted the contract before anyone could talk him out of it. The payment was enormous, yes, but that was not why he took the job. Ven wanted to prove something. He had heard the whispers about humans, the warnings passed between older assassins. He thought they were just stories, exaggerations spread by those who had grown soft and afraid. Ven believed he would show them all how wrong they were. Before traveling to Talos 4, he decided to gather information. That brought him to old Ganeth's shop, where data could be purchased on almost any target in the galaxy. Ganeth sat behind his counter, surrounded by screens and storage devices, his ancient shell barely holding together. "Kira Lawson," Ben said, dropping a credit chip on the counter. "Tell me everything." Ganeth looked at the chip, then at Ben. His old eyes held something that might have been sadness. "You took the contract. I did. Then you're already dead. You just don't know it yet." Ben laughed. "Save your warnings for someone who needs them. Just give me the information." Ganeth did not reach for the credit chip. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and studied the young assassin for a long moment. "Let me tell you a story first," he said. "You can consider it a gift, free of charge. I don't need stories. I need data. You need to listen." Ganeth's voice was sharp now, harder than Ven had expected from such an old creature. 60 years ago, I was part of a team. 12 of us, all professionals, all at the top of our craft. We were hired to eliminate a human merchant who had crossed the wrong people. Just a merchant. You understand. Not a soldier, not a diplomat. A man who sold ship parts for a living. Van crossed his arms but said nothing. We planned for weeks. Studied his routines, his security, his habits. We knew everything about him down to the exact moment he would be most vulnerable. And when the time came, we struck perfectly. 12 of us against one soft, unarmed human. Ganeth paused. The first shot hit him in the chest. He should have dropped immediately. Instead, he looked down at the wound, looked at us, and started running toward us. Running toward you? Toward us. Not away. We hit him 3 more times before he reached the first member of our team. He killed Reth with his bare hands before we could react. Then he picked up Reth's weapon and started shooting back. Ganeth's voice had grown quiet. He was bleeding from 4 different wounds. He should have been dead. But he kept fighting, kept moving, kept killing us one by one. His body would not stop. His mind would not give up. Ben felt something cold in his stomach, but he pushed it down. What happened? I ran. I was the only one who ran fast enough. The others stayed to fight, and the human killed every single one of them. 11 professional assassins, dead at the hands of a wounded merchant. Ganeth looked at Ven with empty eyes. I watched from a distance as he treated his own wounds, gathered evidence of who had sent us, and walked away. Just walked away like he had finished a minor inconvenience. One human got lucky. That doesn't mean it wasn't luck. Ganeth slammed his hand on the counter. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Humans have something inside them, something their bodies produce when they're in danger. They call it adrenaline. It floods their system and turns them into something else entirely. Their pain disappears. Their strength doubles. Their mind focuses on one single goal, and nothing can stop them from reaching it. Every species has survival instincts. This is different. This is beyond survival. This is a species that evolved by refusing to die, refusing to give up, refusing to accept that they had lost. Ganeth shook his head slowly. And that's just one human alone, defending himself. What you're planning to do is worse. You're planning to attack one of their pack. Do you know what happens then? Ven did not answer. They hunt. All of them. Every human who ever knew your target, every human who hears about what you did, they all become hunters. They share information. They coordinate across light years. They do not stop, do not rest, do not forgive. Years can pass, decades even, and they will still be searching for you. Ganeth pushed the credit chip back toward Ven. Take your money. Go home. Find a different career. Because if you do this thing, you will never know peace again. Ven took the chip and stood up. His jaw was tight, his pride wounded by the old creature's words. You've gotten scared in your old age, he said. Humans are animals, just like any other species. They can be killed. Yes, they can be killed. But can you survive what comes after? Ven left without answering. 3 days later, he arrived on Talith 4. The planet was a frontier world, recently colonized, covered in forests and grasslands that reminded him of training environments from his youth. The main settlement was small, maybe 2,000 beings of various species. The humans were a minority here, but their influence was everywhere. They had built the roads, organized the government, established trade with the local Talithian species. And at the center of it all was Kira Lawson. Ven watched her for 3 days before making his move. She was exactly what he expected. Soft, unarmored, walking around with a smile on her face like she had nothing to fear. She spent her days in meetings, her evenings with friends, her mornings walking alone through the colony gardens. That morning walk would be her end. He chose a neural disruptor for the kill, a weapon that attacked the nervous system directly. One shot to center mass would shut down her brain before she even felt pain. Clean, quick, professional. What he did not know, what he could not have known, was that Kira had noticed him on the first day. She had spent her entire career in frontier zones, dealing with hostile species and dangerous situations. She knew when she was being watched. She had sent a quiet message to her friend Mira Cho, the colony's security chief. She had adjusted her routines just enough to seem normal while keeping herself in positions. With good sight lines and escape routes. She was not prey, waiting to be taken. She was bait. And somewhere in the shadows, Mira watched and waited for the hunter to make his mistake. The trap was set. Ven just didn't know he had already walked into it. The morning sun rose over Talith 4, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Ven had positioned himself in the branches of a tree that overlooked the colony gardens. His skin had shifted to match the bark perfectly, making him invisible to anyone who did not know exactly where to look. Below, the gardens spread out in neat rows of alien flowers and imported earth plants. The humans had brought seeds from their home world, and now roses grew beside Talithian crystal blooms. It was beautiful, Ven supposed, if you cared about such things. He did not. He cared only about the woman walking through the garden path. Kira Lawson moved slowly, stopping occasionally to look at the flowers or adjust a stake supporting a young tree. She wore simple clothing, nothing that would stop a neural disruptor. She had no guards, no visible weapons, nothing that suggested she expected danger. Ven smiled. This would be the easiest contract of his career. He raised his weapon, took careful aim at the center of her back, and fired. The shot hit perfectly. The neural disruptor pulse struck her between the shoulder blades, exactly where he had aimed. He watched her body jerk from the impact, watched her stumble forward, watched her fall to one knee. Any other species would have collapsed. The neural disruptor was designed to overwhelm the nervous system instantly, shutting down all brain function before the target could react. Ven had used this weapon dozens of times. He had never seen anyone survive more than 2 seconds after being hit. Kira was on one knee for 3 seconds. Then 4. Then 5. Then she stood up. Ven felt his blood turn cold as the human woman straightened her spine and turned around. Her face was pale, her body trembling slightly, but her eyes were clear. And those eyes found him immediately, staring directly at the branch where he hid as if his camouflage meant nothing at all. She smiled. Ven fired again. The second shot hit her in the chest, and she took a step back from the impact. But she did not fall. Instead, she started walking toward his tree. Then walking became running. Panic seized Ven in a way he had never experienced. He dropped from the tree and started moving, using all the speed his Drellian body could manage. The gardens blurred around him as he ran, his skin shifting colors rapidly to match his changing surroundings. He glanced back once and immediately wished he had not. Kira was chasing him. Not jogging, not hurrying, but sprinting at full speed. She had taken 2 neural disruptor shots that should have killed her, and she was running after him like she felt nothing at all. Her face had changed. The soft diplomat was gone. What chased him now was something primal, something ancient, something that his instinct screamed at him to flee. He ran harder. The colony passed by in a blur of buildings and startled faces. Ven knocked over a merchant's cart and heard it crash behind him. He ducked through an alley so narrow his flexible bones had to compress to fit. He climbed a wall and jumped across rooftops, using every skill he had learned in his years of training. None of it mattered. Every time he looked back, she was there, getting closer. How was this possible? Drellians were faster than humans. Everyone knew that. Humans were slow, clumsy creatures who relied on tools and machines to compete with other species. But this woman ran like she had been built for pursuit, her legs eating up the distance between them with mechanical efficiency. Ven reached the edge of the colony and plunged into the forest beyond. Here, in the wild terrain, he would have the advantage. He knew how to disappear in natural environments, how to become one with his surroundings until even sensors could not find him. He climbed a tree and went still, his skin matching the bark perfectly, his breathing slowed to almost nothing. For several minutes, there was only silence. Then he heard footsteps. Kira emerged from the undergrowth, moving slowly now. The front of her shirt was stained dark where the disruptor shots had hit. She should have been dead. She should have been in shock at the very least. But she walked with purpose, her head turning slowly as she scanned the forest. "I know you here," she said. Her voice was calm, almost conversational. "I can hear your heartbeat. It's very fast right now. You're scared." Ben pressed himself harder against the tree trunk, willing his heart to slow down. "I've been shot before, you know? Not with a neural disruptor, but with worse. A plasma bolt once, right through my shoulder. I kept fighting for 20 minutes before I let anyone treat it." She paused beneath his tree, looking up. "The human body is an amazing thing. When we're in danger, really in danger, our chemistry changes. Pain becomes just information. Exhaustion becomes just another challenge. Our muscles work harder, our senses get sharper, and our brain focuses on one single thing." She was looking directly at him now. His camouflage was perfect, but somehow she knew. "Right now, my brain is focused on you." Ven broke cover and ran. He did not think, did not plan, just moved. Branches whipped at his face as he crashed through the forest. Behind him, he heard her following, tireless and relentless. He ran for an hour. Then, two. His Drellian body was designed for short bursts of speed, not endurance. His muscles burned. His lungs screamed for air. But every time he slowed, every time he thought he might have lost her, he would hear her footsteps somewhere behind him. She never got tired. She never stopped. This was what old Ganef had tried to warn him about. This was what made humans different. They were not the fastest or the strongest, but they could keep going long after any other species would have collapsed. They were persistence hunters, evolved to chase prey across endless the distances until that prey simply gave up and died. And now he was the prey. Ven finally reached his hidden ship as the second sun was setting. His hands shook as he activated the engines. He could barely stand, could barely think, could barely remember how to operate the simple controls he had used 1,000 times before. As the ship lifted off, he looked down at the forest one last time. Kira stood at the edge of the trees, watching him rise into the sky. She did not wave, did not shout, did not show any emotion at all. She just watched. And somehow, that was the most terrifying thing of all. Ven sent his warning message to every assassin, channel he knew before his ship even left the atmosphere. His hands were still shaking as he typed the words. The stories are true. Do not take contracts on humans. They cannot be killed. And even if you succeed, even if you somehow manage to end their life, they will not stay dead in any way that matters. Their pack will remember. Their pack will hunt. And their pack will find you. He set course for the far side of the galaxy. As far from human space as he could possibly get. It would not be far enough. Back on Talith 4, Kira finally allowed herself to feel the pain. She collapsed against a tree, her body shaking as the adrenaline faded and the damage made itself known. Mira found her there 20 minutes later. "You should have let me take the shot," Myra said as she helped her friend to her feet. "I needed him to run. I needed him to spread the word." Kira winced as they walked toward the colony. "But we have a bigger problem now. Whoever hired him won't stop just because one assassin failed. What do we do?" Kira's eyes were hard. "We get ready, and we show them exactly why humans are off the list." The message from Ven Sitha spread through the assassin underworld like fire through dry grass. Within hours, every major guild had received his warning. Within days, encrypted copies were being passed between ships and stations across the galaxy. The Circle of Silence called an emergency meeting for the first time in 300 years. The Circle was not one guild, but a coalition of many. A council of representatives from the most feared assassin organizations in known space. They met in a hidden station that existed on no official charts, in a chamber designed specifically for beings who did not trust each other. Zeth Vorak attended as the representative of the Shadow Veil. He sat in his assigned seat, his forearms folded across his chest, and listened as the others argued. "This is absurd," said a Velian delegate, her silver scales catching the dim light. "One young assassin fails a contract, and now we're supposed to believe humans are untouchable. He simply wasn't skilled enough. Then, why did you refuse the same contract?" Another voice asked from across the chamber. The Velian said nothing. Zeth finally spoke, his soft voice cutting through the noise. The young one's skill was not the issue. "I've reviewed his record. He was competent, perhaps even talented. He failed because he attempted the impossible. Killing one human is not impossible. You're right. Killing one human is relatively easy." Zeth stood and walked to the center of the chamber. "I've done it myself, twice, early in my career. Both times were mistakes that I spent years correcting. Both times nearly cost me everything." The chamber fell silent. "The first time, I killed a human traitor who had cheated my client. Clean work, no witnesses, body never found. 3 years later, I woke up with a human woman standing over my bed with a knife at my throat." Zeth touched a scar on his neck that none of them had noticed before. She was his daughter. She had spent every moment of those 3 years hunting me. She gave up her career, her home, her entire life, just to find me. What happened? I convinced her that I had been deceived by my client, that the traitor had been innocent, and that the client was the true enemy. It was a lie, but a useful one. She left to hunt the client instead. Zeth's black eyes scanned the chamber. That client was the head of a major trading house. He had an army of security, the best that money could buy. She killed him anyway. Took her 2 more years, but she did it. One human's obsession does not. The second time, Zeth continued as if no one had spoken. I killed a human soldier during a territorial conflict. Also clean work. Also no witnesses. 7 years later, a human naval vessel hunted me across 3 star systems. Not one officer seeking revenge. An entire ship. Because that soldier had been popular among his crew, and they decided together that they would find whoever killed him. Zeth returned to his seat. Humans do not forget. They do not forgive. They do not stop. These are not stories invented to frighten children. These are facts confirmed by centuries of observation. Every assassin who has taken a contract on a human has either died or spent the rest of their life running. An old Corthan on the far side of the chamber raised a withered hand. I remember the early days of human expansion into the galaxy. We thought they would be easy prey. Many guilds took many contracts. Within 2 generations, those guilds no longer existed. The discussion continued for hours. Stories were shared, evidence was presented, and slowly the remaining skeptics began to understand what they were dealing with. Finally, a vote was called. The decision was unanimous. The Circle of Silence officially declares all contracts on humans to be forbidden, the Velian announced, having changed her position. Any assassin who accepts such a contract will be expelled from all affiliated guilds and marked for termination. The message went out across the galaxy. The assassins had made their choice, but Councillor Drath had already made his. When word reached him that even the Circle had refused his contract, Drath's rage boiled over into something cold and calculated. If the professional killers would not do the job, he would handle it himself. He had resources. He had power. He had an entire private military force loyal to his family. He gathered 12 ships and 3,000 soldiers, more than enough to wipe a small frontier colony off the map. He did not care about subtlety anymore. He did not care about consequences. Kira Lawson had ruined his operations, embarrassed him in front of the underworld, and turned his name into a joke. She would pay with everything she had. His fleet set course for Talith 4. On the colony world, Kira had finished healing. The neural disruptor wounds had closed within a week, her human body knitting itself back together with typical efficiency. But she knew the real fight was still coming. Myra brought her the intelligence report while she was working in the garden. 12 ships, 3,000 troops, armed transports and ground assault vehicles. They're not sending another assassin. They're sending an army. Kira read the report without expression. When? 4 days. That's enough time. Kira looked up at her friend. Send the signal. Call in everyone we have. The response was immediate. Commander Danny Vance arrived 2 days later with a small team of military advisors. He was a human from Earth itself, broad-shouldered and calm in a way that made other species nervous. He had fought in 3 different frontier conflicts and had never lost an engagement. 12 ships and 3,000 soldiers against a colony of 2,000 civilians and maybe 100 trained fighters, he said after reviewing the situation. The numbers aren't in our favor. They never are, Kira said. Vance smiled. It was not a friendly expression. I didn't say we couldn't win. I just said the numbers aren't in our favor. Over the next 2 days, the colony transformed. Humans who had been farmers and merchants and administrators became something else entirely. They dug trenches and built fortifications. They laid traps in the forest and prepared ambush points along every approach. They calibrated weapons and planned fields of fire. The local Talithian species watched in amazement. They had seen the human colonists as peaceful visitors, perhaps even harmless compared to other galactic species. Now they saw something different. Now they saw a species preparing for war with the focused intensity of beings who had been fighting since before they could walk upright. You seem almost eager for this, Myra observed as she and Kira inspected the defensive preparations. Not eager, Kira said. Resolved. This counselor has decided to threaten my home, my friends, my people. He thinks numbers and firepower will be enough. She checked her weapon with practiced ease. He's never seen what happens when humans decide something belongs to them and someone tries to take it away. The night before the fleet was scheduled to arrive, Vance gathered all the humans in the colony together. 47 adults and 31 children. The children would be evacuated in the morning, hidden in caves that the Talithians had prepared. The adults would stay and fight. Some of you have never been in combat, Vance said. Some of you have never even held a weapon before last week. That's okay, because you have something that no amount of training can teach and no technology can replace. He looked at each of them in turn. You have stubbornness. You have spite. You have the absolute refusal to give up even when every logical calculation says you should. That's what being human means. That's what they don't understand and can never understand about us. Kira stepped forward. Tomorrow, an army comes to destroy our home. They think they're the hunters and we're the prey. They think numbers and weapons will be enough. They're wrong. We're going to show them exactly why the assassins said no. We're going to show them why targeting humans is a death sentence. The colonists did not cheer. They did not need to. The quiet determination in their eyes said everything. Outside, in the darkness between the stars, Drath's fleet moved closer with each passing hour. He sat in his command chair, imagining the terror that his forces would bring to the small colony. He had no idea what was waiting for him. Drath's fleet entered the atmosphere of Talith 4 at dawn. 12 ships descended through the purple sky like metal birds of prey. Drath watched from the command deck of his flagship, satisfaction warming his chest. Below, the small colony looked fragile and exposed, its simple buildings scattered across the landscape like toys waiting to be crushed. Begin landing operations, he ordered. I want ground forces deployed within the hour. The first transport touched down in a clearing a kilometer from the colony's edge. Its ramp lowered, and 30 soldiers of the Hegemony Guard marched out in perfect formation. They wore advanced armor and carried weapons that could level buildings. They were professionals, trained for conquest, equipped for domination. They made it exactly 40 meters before the ground exploded. Beneath them, the humans had buried charges along every likely landing zone. The first transport lost half its soldiers before any of them could fire a shot. The survivors scattered for cover, only to find that the cover itself was part of the trap. Hidden compartments opened and humans emerged, firing at close range where the Hegemony's superior weapons meant nothing. What's happening down there? Drath demanded as reports of chaos flooded his command deck. Ambush, Counselor. The humans were waiting for us. Then land more troops. Overwhelm them. More transports descended. More soldiers poured onto the battlefield. And more of them died. The humans fought like nothing the Hegemony had ever encountered. They appeared from nowhere, struck with devastating precision, and vanished before the soldiers could respond. When cornered, they did not surrender or retreat. They attacked harder, fighting through wounds that would have killed any sensible species. Commander Vance led a team through the eastern forest, systematically destroying Hegemony squads before they could organize. He took a plasma bolt to his left arm halfway through the engagement. He kept fighting, switching his weapon to his right hand without breaking stride. Mira commanded the colony's main defensive line, turning the streets into a maze of overlapping fire zones. When Hegemony forces breached the first barrier, they found themselves trapped in a crossfire from 3 directions. When they retreated, they discovered that the colonists had already closed off their escape route, and Kira was everywhere. She had spent weeks learning every centimeter of the colony and the surrounding terrain. Now she used that knowledge like a weapon, appearing behind enemy lines to disrupt communications, then vanishing before pursuit could begin. Soldiers who chased her into the forest did not return. Squads that cornered her in buildings discovered too late that every room had multiple exits and every exit led to another ambush. Drath's 3,000 soldiers became 2,000, then 1,500, then 1,000. The losses accumulated with impossible speed. How is this happening? Drath screamed at his tactical officers. They're farmers, merchants, diplomats. How are they destroying our forces? No one had an answer. By midday, The hegemony advance had stalled completely. Drath's forces held a perimeter around their remaining transports, but did not move forward without catastrophic casualties. The humans had turned the entire landscape into a trap, and every attempt to spring that trap only made things worse. "Order a retreat," one of Drath's advisors finally suggested. "We can regroup and—" No. Drath's scales had gone dark with rage. "We have orbital superiority. If we cannot take the colony with ground forces, we will destroy it from above. Counselor, there are civilians on the ground. The Galactic Accords. I do not care about the Accords. I will burn this world to glass before I let these humans make a fool of me." He turned to issue the orbital strike order. He found Zeth Vorik standing behind him. The assassin had appeared without a sound, his forearms at his sides, his black eyes empty of any emotion. Drath's personal guards were unconscious on the floor around him. How did you get on my ship?" "I walked," Zeth said simply. "Your security was distracted by the situation below. They did not expect an attack from within your own fleet. You refused my contract. What do you want?" Zeth stepped closer. "I want you to understand something, Counselor. The assassins refused your contract not because we fear humans, though we do. We refused because we understand something that you do not." "And what is that?" "Balance." Zeth's voice remained soft, almost gentle. "For centuries, there has been an understanding between the assassin guilds and the human species. We do not target them. They do not target us. This understanding has kept the peace and allowed both sides to exist without conflict." Zeth reached out with one of his 4 hands and gripped Drath's collar. "You have upset that balance. You have forced a confrontation that never needed to happen. You have made the assassin guilds look foolish by association with your failed operation. And now you are about to commit an act of genocide that will bring human vengeance down on everyone connected to you, including those of us who refuse to help. Release me. I am a counselor of the hegemony. You are a liability." Zeth's grip tightened. "The Circle of Silence has voted. You are to be terminated, not as a contract, but as pest control. Your death will be blamed on human action during the battle below. Your family will receive your assets, and this matter will be considered closed." "You can't do this." "I have protection. I have." Zeth's other 3 arms moved simultaneously. It was quick and clean, as professional as everything else he did. When it was done, he activated the ship's communication system and broadcast on all hegemony frequencies. "Your leader is dead. Your attack has failed. The humans offer you one opportunity to withdraw. Take it now or share his fate." The remaining hegemony ships left orbit within the hour. On the ground, the surviving soldiers surrendered to human forces. They were treated with mercy they had not expected, given medical care and food before being allowed to leave. The humans could have executed them all and no one would have blamed them. Instead, they chose to send a different message. "What about the monsters here?" Kira told the highest-ranking survivor. "Go back to your people. Tell them what happened. Tell them that we defended our home against impossible odds and won. And tell them that anyone who tries this again will face the same result." The soldier looked at her with something like awe. He had watched his entire invasion force crumble against a handful of humans. He had seen beings fight through wounds that should have killed them, display tactical genius that his commanders could not match, and show mercy when violence would have been justified. "I'll tell them," he said. "I'll tell everyone." The story spread quickly after that dot. It merged with Ven's warning and the Circle's ban and 1,000 other tales about human capabilities. Training manuals for assassins across the galaxy were updated with a new section, always placed at the very beginning. On humans, why we do not accept these contracts. Recruitment officers for private military companies added a new question to their screening. Are you willing to face humans in combat? Those who said yes were generally rejected as too stupid to trust with important operations. And in the darkest corners of the galactic underworld, the legend grew. Humans were not just dangerous. Humans were something outside the normal categories of prey and predator. They were a force of nature, a category unto themselves. A species that had conquered a death world and carried that victory with them wherever they went. Months later, a young assassin sat with her mentor in a quiet bar on the far edge of civilized space. She was new to the profession, eager to learn and full of questions. "I've seen the training materials," she said. "The section on humans. But no one will tell me why they're really off limits. Is it just reputation? Stories meant to scare newcomers?" Her mentor was old, scarred from decades of work. He sipped his drink and considered the question for a long moment. "Let me ask you something first. What do you think makes a species dangerous? Weapons, claws, venom, natural armor. Wrong." The mentor set down his drink. "Those things make a species deadly. But dangerous is something else entirely. Dangerous is what happens when a species refuses to accept defeat. Dangerous is what happens when every setback only makes them more determined. Dangerous is what happens when killing one of them doesn't end the threat, it multiplies it." The young assassin was quiet. "Killing a human is easy," the mentor continued. "Their bodies are soft. They have no natural defenses. Any competent assassin could end one of their lives without much difficulty." He leaned forward. "But surviving what comes after, that's the impossible part. Because humans don't see death as an ending. They see it as a reason to keep fighting. Kill one human, and you've made enemies of every human who ever knew them. Every human who ever heard about them. Every human who simply decides that what you did was wrong. So we just never touch them? Never." The mentor finished his drink and stood to leave. Because targeting a human isn't a contract. It's a death sentence. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But eventually, certainly, inevitably. And no amount of money is worth that. He walked away, leaving the young assassin to consider his words. Somewhere across the galaxy, on the frontier world of Talos 4, Kira Lawson walked through her garden in the morning light. The flowers were blooming again, both the alien species and the roses from Earth. The colony was rebuilding, stronger than before. She paused to adjust a stake supporting a young tree, and for just a